Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good night, wherever you are joining us. Thank you very much for joining this Tridge September webinar, which is titled Strategies for Developing Markets to Engage International Buyers. So we have a very interesting topic today that we will be discussing. We will have a presentation ready for you, and we also have a discussion with our panelists that I'm later introducing to you. So today we'll be looking into the process of exporting to developed countries, while we review guidelines and protocols established in main importing markets. Our expert panelists will be discussing the challenges and opportunities that developing markets have in the agricultural trade today, as we also review some successful cases. We're broadcasting live from YouTube and LinkedIn. I'm sure you are familiar with these platforms, but in case if any difficulties you may have, please reach out to us via the chat and we'll see how we can assist you. So please use the chat that is there also for any questions that you have throughout the webinar. So let's start. Okay, so first of all, let me introduce you to our new enhanced service that is the social marketplace. So this is our new enhanced fulfillment tool that we used to have, but this one enhanced a new platform or a new design of the platform. The purpose of this is to launch a new business-to-business marketplace designed to help buyers and suppliers to connect, engage, and build long-term relationships founded on trust. You will find that there's new features like certifying you as a supplier, certifying you as a buyer, which will give you more trust in who are you talking to and who are you trading with. So for all you previous users of the marketplace here on Tridge, and for newcomers also who are interested, please go and explore our new trading platform. I'm sure you would like it. So moving on, we'll as all of the webinars that we do here, we will be providing proof of attendance. So near the end of the webinar, we'll share a link to a survey in the chat. The survey will help us to continue providing quality content in our webinar. So please take part in the survey. And after that, it will allow you to enter your details to receive the attendance of certificate. So please go there if you need an attendance of certificate. Okay, so let's move on to our content of the webinar today. We have divided the webinar in three main parts. The first one will be the presentation about basic guidelines and protocols for exporting to developed countries. Then we will move on to have a review of the main case studies, successful stories that we have pointed out and that we will be discussing as well. And then we will move on to our panel discussion, which we have prepared three questions for our panelists, and they will discuss them in the third part of the panel. And then if we have time, we will also attend to some of the Q&A questions that you have input in the Q&A in the private chat section of this. So let's move on. Let me introduce myself first. I will be your host in this webinar today. I am a global market analyst here in Tridge. I'm based in Mexico and I cover the fruit and vegetables category. And then for the rest of the webinar, Gabi will be Gabriela Cabezas, which is based in Ecuador, and she's also a global market analyst. She will be our presenter here today. But we also have as panelist Mehmet Unluyurt. He's a trade manager here on Tridge for nuts and grains based in Turkey. We also have Jun Primawan, which is a researcher for the Global Market Intelligence team here in Tridge. He's based in Indonesia. And we also have Hamza Sethi, which is our trade and sales manager based in UK and Europe. So with that done, please, I will take pass the microphone to Gabby so she can start our presentation today. Thank you, Gabby.
Thank you, Juan, for the introduction. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today on our webinar. So we're first going to start with basic guidelines and protocols for exporting to developed countries. So if we can start on the next slide, Juan, please. So to understand trading, we need to understand a little bit international trade and how it has been working over the past couple of years. So since the start of the COVID-19 pandemic, international trade definitely changed as borders were closed. As you can see here on the graph, on 2019, the global trade was at 25 trillion, but in 2020, due to the pandemic, it declined by 2.5 trillion. But then in 2021, it increased again by 5.5 trillion, reaching 28 trillion. And by the end of 2022, it was expected to be recovered at 32 trillion. But over the past couple of years, international trade definitely fluctuated. So, in terms of agricultural trade, on our next slide, we can see that agricultural trade is a little part of what encompasses the whole international trade chain. So agricultural sectors include fruit, vegetables, animal products, oil, fats, tobacco, and beverages, and it contributed to less than 10% of international trade, totaling 2 trillion in 2021, which is just a little part of the whole chain of trade. Many developing countries rely heavily on agricultural and natural resources for their export portfolios. That includes countries in Africa, Latin America, and the Middle East. So these countries rely economically hugely on agricultural trade. That's why it's so important for their producers to develop international trade markets. On the other hand, some countries in Africa and Asia have reduced their commodity dependence. And that's why Latin American countries are taking a little bit more of a market share over the past couple of years. So to understand agricultural trade, going over to the next slide, we can see that international agricultural trade involves so many moving components. International trade will never be the same because it will always change depending on the origination country, on the destination country, and on the products that are being exported or traded. It involves a global exchange of crops, livestock, related products, and it serves as a vital component of the global economy, supporting food security, economic growth, and agricultural development. There are many key ideas or components that are crucial for each agricultural trade case, and that includes global food security, economic significance, diversity of agricultural products, trade regulations, trade barriers, trade agreements, market access. The last four are heavily dependent on government decisions. So every country will be different. And also some things that are happening globally are sustainability and environmental traits, technological advancements, market volatility and changes are always present in agricultural trade. Also, global supply chains are crucial. That's why in 2020, when the pandemic was at its full force, it definitely impacted global trade as supply chains were affected due to the port closings and the pandemic restrictions. Geopolitical factors, consumer preferences, and quality and safety are playing a huge role in the agricultural trade. So, going over, we can definitely start diving in a little bit more on how to enter a new market successfully. But as I mentioned, a couple of minutes ago, entering a new market will always be different according to the destination country, export country, and the product. So what we are talking about today are general guidelines and suggestions on how you can start looking into entering a new market. So for developing an international market, one of the first things you need to do is understanding how you want to approach this entry with what entry strategy. They're not universal because they're contingent on the specific nature of the business. But two of the most popular approaches are a market concentration approach, which means that you are focusing on a select number of markets, offers several advantages. And when you're focusing just on a very few markets, you will gain in-depth knowledge of the market, allowing products to be customized for each specific market, which will allow cost reductions across logistics, management, and operations, increase resources that will be allocated to market promotions and marketing campaigns, and enhance control of international activity. So when you have less markets to focus on, you will be able to focus your resources onto those smaller markets to grow them at a higher rate. Some important factors in this concentration approach include a stable international demand, a market with multiple potential customers. You can develop more customers on one market rather than less customers on multiple markets. Products with extended life cycles, controlled competition, because you will get to know your competitors in the market better. This approach is better for small companies that have limited resources for expansion, and product adaptations will help enter the market in a more specific product-focused way. The same you can do with promotional and marketing campaigns, and logistic costs will be lower as you will be shipping your product to lesser markets. On the other hand, we have the opposite approach, that is market diversification, and is introducing your product to multiple markets, even with smaller market shares. And it offers some advantages as well, depending on the nature of your business. So it can have a potential rapid sales growth depending on the market of your choosing. You have the ability to set different price points at different markets depending on the purchase power in each market you're entering. And also there's a risk diversification, meaning that if one of your markets fail and your business is not successful there, you have many other markets that are thriving that will not affect your business economical stability. Important factors on this diversification approach include the global demand for the product. Is always very important to analyze the demand of each country. The product has a extended life cycle. There's a more competitive landscape as you will be facing more competitors. Your products or service have to be standardized across all markets because you cannot adapt to hundreds of markets at the same time. And there will be more logistic costs that will impact directly your business. So with that said, let's quickly dive into a little bit of the factors that will help you develop international markets. So we're going to touch on analysis of a global market selection, quality assurance, logistics and supply chain, trade regulations, product adaptation, marketing and promotion, and trade finance and payments methods. So let's start with an analysis for global market selection. It is always extremely important to analyze the market you're trying to enter. If you don't do a thorough analysis of the market you're enter, it's very possible that your product will not be successful as you don't know if there is demand for this product. So things to analyze during a market analysis is the GDP growth of the country. So is this country economically stable? Does it have the infrastructure and potential to grow on an industry? And that includes tourism activities on many of the countries around the world. Analyze the country risk. So you need to see if it has a stable political stability, social stability, security, and current cycles, because countries that have unstable governments, or it has an unstable economy, will have a higher risk where your product can fail than stable economic countries. Political factors, also considering government involvement, that includes stability and trade potential. As I mentioned before, stability in the government is crucial. Market appeal. The market appeal encompasses both the demand for the product, if your product is needed, how are the competitors doing in the country, and also operational challenges. You need to see what are the taxing rates, if you're able to export your product over there, if there are ports necessary, if there are trucks, if you have frozen products, if there is enough of trucks, with refrigerated trucks that can transport your products. Just analyze if you have all the resources on that country that you can hire, or the buyer can hire, in order to import successfully your product. And also there are many other factors that you could look at, that it includes the proximity to your country, so trade will be cheaper and easier, cultural alignment, and other resources on the market. So going over to the market selection, it's also important to analyze distribution channels, and that means there are several distribution options available that include exporting from your home market to international markets. You can collaborate with a local distributor or a target agent in your country, or an international agent that will help you export. Also, employing your all commercial representatives, have in-house workers that will help sell your product. Also, you can utilize online platforms that will help you sell your products to international buyers, such as Tridge, or establishing subsidiary or entrusting operations to a delegate country, or joining or forming a joint venture with a company on your country that already exports or does business internationally. Also, it's important to analyze the competition. You need to analyze if a market has very established competitors that will make impossible your entry to the market, or if there's a gap that you can fill with your product, including better pricing, higher quality product, and that's why you analyze competitors' pricing, the distribution channels they hold, market maturity, their financial stability, and the growth potential. So by evaluating your competitors, you will be able to tell if you could enter the market successfully and take over an important part of the market share, that it is what you want when entering a market. Ahead on the next slide, we'll see the analysis of the demand analysis. It's also very important to see if your product is needed there, if there's a gap for your product. If you're trying to export, for example, bananas, you can see that the top exporting countries like Ecuador, Colombia, or Guatemala would not be ideal to exporting your bananas, because they have enough supply internally, and that happens with many other products globally. You need to analyze that there is that local demand for their product, or to process that product as well. So you need to evaluate the profile and demand trends, confirm that your product is suitable, utilize a marketing strategy and a market strategy to see if it will align with the goals and needs of your company. And it's always good to either do it by an internal team, or hire an external party to do this analysis for you, so you can ensure a more stable entry to the market. So something very important right now for your products to enter a new market is the quality. So on the now we're looking into the next slide, and the quality assurance, how it is vital for a global market expansion. Juan, can we go to the next slide, please? Thank you. So how it is very important for a global expansion. Quality has become key as consumers are looking for high quality products at competitive prices in order to compete in each market. So to ensure quality, you need to make sure your product meets international standards and regulations for exports. It is quality in your product is consistent and reliable, or all batches or all products exported are within the same quality characteristics. Also, you need to include testing and inspection within your products before trying to export it to make sure it all appeals with standards and international qualities. And that includes, for that to happen, you always need to train your staff to do training and skill development within your team on field and on office as well. Also, it's important to have a risk mitigation plan, meaning like what are our steps to take if we face a quality issue on an export shipping or on an export batch. It's always good to have a risk mitigation plan. I'm sorry. That way, your company will not be as affected if something goes wrong with quality in a shipment. And also, it's always good to have international certifications, as many countries request certain certifications for each specific product in order to allow the entry. So it's always good to take a step ahead and have the certifications before trying to export internationally. And also make sure that you are legally compliant to all rules, regulations, taxes in your country, and also in the countries you're trying to export. Going ahead, looking at logistics and supply chain management, I mentioned it very quickly earlier. Supply chain is extremely important to export and import products, as if there's not an efficient supply chain, the products won't be able to reach the final destination in the proper conditions. So it's crucial for expansion, optimizing operation costs, cutting costs, and ensuring a timely product delivery. And some key things that are important to look at for efficient supply chains are for logistics and supply chain management is creating efficient supply chains, trying to see where are the best routes that we can use to ship the product so the product can be streamlined and costs can be lower. Also, transportation optimization. Is it best to export my product by air, by land, by sea? What is the best companies or types of vehicles that we can use to export our products? Also, storage solutions. Once our product reaches the destination port or reaches every transitory port, find reliable storage solutions that have the necessary conditions, for example, refrigerated areas that will maintain your product at its optimal quality. Also, it's important to have an inventory management of your products on your homeland and also on the transitory ports. Risk mitigation as well, the same story as with quality. Create a plan in order to mitigate any risk in the case that something happens during transit and logistics, how you can make the product arrive to the final destination on a timely manner. Also, distribution channels are extremely important to see how your product will be changed, and also environmental considerations. For example, if you know that a country faces many hurricanes, many environmental challenges, and your product can pass through that country or through a different country, try for your products to have to transit along countries that usually don't have environmental issues that could affect the supply chain of your product and the timely delivery of your product. And also, it's important to always look in logistics with new technology. Logistics and supply chains always change, so it's important to always hold in regard a continuous improvement. Going over with trade regulations and compliance, as I mentioned, trade regulations and compliance especially will be different for every country and every product, but they're very, very important and essential step when entering a foreign market. When entering a market, you need to, the best way would probably talk to a lawyer, to an industry expert, or a company that has expertise in exporting, so they can help you assure that you are complying with all the import and export regulations, customs procedures that will change within every country, including the certifications that I talked a little bit ago. Also, you need, and this is very important in order for your product to enter a market, you need to use the harmonized system codes, the HS codes, and label your product accordingly. That way it will have no problem in customs, whether entering or exiting a country. Always, it's good if you can apply a chain that can trace the origin of your product and the rules of origin. It will help you export easier, hold to sanitary and phytosanitary standards. That's key when trying to export successfully. Also, trade agreement and treaties. For example, if your country has a ban to export to a certain country, despite all your efforts, you won't be able to do it. I know that there are many producers on countries that talk to the government and push them to open or sign a trade agreement with certain interest markets or interest countries. And if that's something that interests you and there's a very big potential market, as a grower association or an exporter association, you can always request for a revision from the government if it's a larger group of suppliers that are trying to enter this market. Also, compliance monitoring and export controls, compliance in terms of quality, supply chain standards, that's always relevant for the different exporting systems, and also legal counsel and expertise. As I mentioned when starting looking at this, it's always good to consult experts and trade organizations to navigate all the different complex regulations, as every country and every product will encounter different regulations that they need to follow. Going over with product adaptation, it is very crucial to not only see that demand is present on your market, but also that your product will fit in well with the markets. And when I'm talking with fit in well with the markets, is talking about consumer preferences. Also, what's the type of packaging a country's use? What is appealing to the local consumers? Some countries are looking more at like plain packaging or very straightforward packaging. And for example, some other countries look for a more elaborated packaging, more colors, and that will always be useful when getting to the final consumer. But in terms of buyers and suppliers, you can always discuss with them to see what is the local preferences. For example, you can modify, if we're talking about an example could be potato chips. If you're trying to export potato chips, probably to the Asian market, there will be more interest in seafood flavored potato chips. But if you're trying to export the same potato chips to Mexico, maybe that's not the best market for it. But if you provide a spicy potato chip for Mexico or for the US or for other Latin American countries, it will be more well perceived. So modification of your product and product adaptation is key. Also, as I mentioned, packaging will appeal the final consumer, and the final consumers are the ones who create local demand. So it's important to adhere to the local preferences of packaging. Also understanding seasonality. So it's important to adapt your production schedule to align with crop seasonality and with your competitor countries, and if it's a product to demand seasonality. So for example, if you produce if you're trying to export turkeys, probably exporting frozen turkeys will be more successful during the last quarter of each year because of the high demand for turkeys in many countries for holidays such as Thanksgiving, Christmas, So that's why it's important to always explore the seasonality when your product is in highest demand. Also, cultural sensitivity. Try to avoid entering countries that your product will be offending to the natural to the local culture, or has insensitive packaging, branding, or product attributes. So it's important to conduct research in order for effective adaptation, and also a competitive analysis. It's always crucial for this. Analyze the successful competitors in the market, what they're doing well, what they're not doing well, and how can you fill the gap that they have in the market. Next, for marketing and promotion, effective marketing and promotion. Juan, can we please go? Oh, thank you. So for effective marketing and promotion, your products or services in international markets will not be known by the local consumer. So it's really, really important to build an effective marketing and promotional campaign, whether if your target is the final consumer or buyers or retailers or bigger distributors. It's always good to target your marketing and promotional efforts to your direct customer. So for that to happen, it's very important to create an international brand presence by developing a cultural sensitive brand identity and localizing marketing materials. Also, with multi-channel marketing, it could be a good way to get your products and company known by utilizing marketing channels, including digital, social media, and localized campaigns in the different countries to develop and reach the audience you want. Market segmentation, it's also very, very important to divide international market and target. Campaigning will be different in different continents, in different countries, in different regions. So it's important to segment your market and target your marketing efforts accordingly. Also, international SEO and SEM, that are online marketing campaigns that can optimize your online presence and their search engines. So when looking for a supplier of apples, if you in Chile, if you place your company with a SEO or SEM strategy, when someone looks in Google Apple suppliers in Chile, your company will pop up and it will help you enter different markets. So it's very important to use technology and digital marketing for it as well. Also, very, very important for agricultural trade. Participating in international trade shows or online exhibitions are key to get to know new buyers, to make connections, to make trade relationships with different suppliers and buyers across the globe. So that's very recommended with agricultural trade, and collaborating or partnerships with other companies that have these connections are also important. And as always, hearing the customer engagement and feedback will help you develop a better marketing and promotional campaign, therefore grow your company products. Going ahead with trade, finance, and payment methods. This is a little bit of a not a trickier subject, but a subject that it's not 100% needed before developing your company, but it's always good to have this in place because it will help buyers to trust your company more and to develop better business. So it's important for your products or services in international markets to build brand awareness, to establish credibility and driving sales, that you have secure payment methods that your buyer can trust the way they're paying you, trust the way that they're giving you a certain amount of money, and you will deliver the product on a quality and timely manner. That many companies help with these transactions, and they secure that both parts are happy with the end result in the transaction. Also, for exporting costs, when starting, it's always a little bit harder because of the cash flow. So there are many financing options for exporters in the different countries. Sometimes they are with governmental agencies, sometimes where they are with local banks. But if money or financials are an issue when starting your trade business within your company, it's always good to look at financing options, letters of credit, or open account terms with different buyers and suppliers. In terms of open account terms, consider offering with open accounts to only trusted customers, with long-term customers, or with companies that are trusted with this type of transactions in an international level, as to assess credit worthiness, and also establish a credit link to minimize payment risks. Cash advance, so that means requesting a payment in advance from your customer. It's always suggested with a first-time customer, or also use expert and creative agencies to collaborate with them for financial support, risk mitigation, and expert credit assurance, or any other financing program they have. This will ensure your timely matter. Finally, currency management is also very, very important. So going over with international trade trends, what we have seen over the past years with what global consumers or global buyers are looking is there's a very high demand now for agricultural products, as consumers are having a more healthy approach to food. So they're looking organic products, they're looking dietary preference are changes, and that has led to demand for grains, meat, dairy, organic products. Also sustainable products, agricultural products have been a great demand, with concerns influencing agricultural trade. The growing demand for sustainability agricultural products are with trade agreements and clean labeling have been growing over the past year. So if you offer sustainable products, organic products, now is your time to enter the international market. Also, changing consumer preferences are important, and as I mentioned, they're changing for healthier and more diverse diets, with increased demand for organic, non-GMO, and plant-based products. Trade facilitation and digitalization. Many consumers and buyers are now looking for products on the web, on platforms that offer international trade shows. For example, Tridge offers our products and our supplier products online. So it's a great way to get to different clients and buyers that are looking for an easier way to find suppliers rather than the traveling. As I mentioned, GMOs, genetically modified products, have also been growing over the market. So those are a little bit of the general guidelines that you need to look into when looking into exporting. We're trying to export. As I mentioned, it will always be changing, but now we can tell you some success stories and some cases where Tridge has helped to reach the final market and final destination for certain companies and certain products. So for example, last September, so a year ago, Tridge helped to make it happen the first shipment of Egyptian grapes from Egypt to Brazil. So Tridge successfully facilitated the first ever export of Egyptian grapes last September, and because a major food wholesaler in Sao Paulo, Brazil, bought 28 tons of Egyptian grapes into containers. So since there, some business has happened between suppliers of grapes in Egypt and buyers of grapes in Brazil as well. Why was there a demand? Because there was, due to extreme weather conditions, including heavy rains, cold fronts in southern Brazil, the demand for foreign grapes increased. And Tridge saw that there was a gap in the market, and they saw that Egyptian grapes fit in the quality standards, the requirements. They work together with the supplier and the buyer to make this transaction happen, and it was successful. And since then, more business has been happening, despite it was a very frequent import of this product. But according to demand and environmental changes, it was able to happen. A second case that I can tell you a little bit about is a Brazilian company sourcing matcha tea from Japan. They were initially sourcing locally and sourcing in Latin America at much higher prices. So their smoothies and final product were obviously priced higher, and their revenues their profit margin was definitely decreasing. So this manufacturer in Brazil decided to find a better solutions and sourcing for this ingredient. So they used Tridge and to purchase and find a good supplier that offered quality matcha at more affordable pricing. And they found this in Japan rather than the traders they were previously using in Italy, Brazil, and in the Americas. So Tridge helps facilitate not only the contact, but the papers, the solutions that need to be figured out in terms of logistics, in terms of legal compliance. And since then, this company has been importing their matcha from Japan at more affordable prices. Going over to a third case, and this one it's a little bit more interesting case, as an Argentinian hypermarket chain was responding to surging ready-made meal market, but they were needing canned fish, and initially they were looking for a different type of fish that was anchovy and sardine, but Tridge helped them find out that Baltic sprats were a better option for their business, that they were going to enter the market more easily. Pricing was better for them to import this product in terms of not only prices, but taxing brackets. So they identified a growing demand for Baltic sprats, and they were able to connect the buyer in Argentina with multiple European suppliers. So they could start purchasing from them and importing Baltic sprats to Argentina. This case has also been successful, and the company has been doing business with European suppliers since. These are just a couple of examples. As I mentioned, there are so many different trade regulations, products, origination countries, destination countries, that each case will be different, and each case needs to be analyzed individually. So we have just covered the general terms and some examples of how your company can find a niche market and enter your product or import products from different markets. So I will hand over to Juan. Please take over so we can continue.
Okay, thank you very much for that insightful presentation, Gabi. So we're running out of time, so let's go straight to the questions that we have prepared for our panelists. I hope they're insightful for you as well. And again, please submit your Q&A that we'll review after the webinar, because we probably won't have time today. So let's just go to the first question. So it says, how can developing markets identify the most suitable international buyers for their products or services? So very interesting question. Mehmet, why don't we start with you?
Sure. Hello, everyone. Yeah, this is Mehmet, and I'm senior manager at Tridge. I'm in charge of pulses and grains and also nuts group. So actually, Gabriela already mentioned all the main points, and since we are lacking of the time, I will keep it short. But when we consider, of course, everything, start analyzing the market and then knowing the product that we are supplying, because when we want to supply anything, we must know all details to be trusted by the buyers, right? So when we are considering all of this situation and when we're analyzing the countries, what I would recommend the most when we do analysis, it must be not just a, like 1 year, 2 year space. It must be like at least 4 or 5 years back, so we can exactly learn what was the trend of this engagement with those countries. And when we target to reach these countries, we need to know what exactly they want, because you might have like perfect purity commodity at your hand, but that market, if they don't interest, you will not be able to compete with the market. So at the end, you will not be able to cover the market, and it will just cause that with failure. So knowing the buyer, knowing the product, knowing the market is of course the most important thing. But when we talk about the Turkey market, it's very tight market as the margin, but too many buyers, too many suppliers, and it's kind of like breach when you compare to like Middle East and Europe part. So there are too many re-exporters, repacking companies. Like volume is huge, competition is very hard. So if you would like to compete with them, you have to have very strong structure of your company, and you have to give very good solution, and of course the trust, because already there are ongoing ones, and you should have some strength to compete with them. And for this, what I would recommend when you are trying to export those countries, please have some your company introduction based on the reality and explaining your product, what you have in trustworthy way. And when you reach the buyers, it can be like online platforms, or it can be face-to-face meeting or whatever. Being honest would just open the gate of the Turkey for you. Otherwise, if you don't know the product and the market very well, just the knowing that some market insights may not help, especially when the commodity market is moving very fast.
Okay.
For the first question.
Okay, thank you, Mehmet. So that's interesting. Hamza, is that look similar to your process to find a suitable buyer, or what difference when it turns to the European market?
I mean, my my advice. Sorry, I'll just introduce myself. My name is Hamza Sethi. I'm the senior trade sale manager for the UK and Europe for Tridge. I've been involved in the fresh produce industry essentially for over 2 decades now. I would suggest that countries need to do a lot of market research and customize their marketing strategies to understand exactly what demands a country has, and then adapt their products according to that specific country. I mean, to keep it short, you need to have a market analysis of things. You need to understand the market trends and the size of the potential market that you want to go in for. One good opportunity which I would always recommend to people is please visit the trade shows and expositions, shows such as Fruit Logistica, Fruit Attraction. We have Asia Fruit Logistica, or PMA in the USA. That would really help you gauge what potential buyer demands are, because you are going in and conversating with people from different countries and origins, and that would definitely help. One thing I would suggest that everyone keeps in mind to develop their product in different markets is think of a long-term strategy to send your product to particular countries. Don't think of an initial 1 or 2 containers sale. Try to make a program for your product with these developed countries, so that you can have a demand for your product year round.
Okay, that's great. Jun, do you have anything to add from the Asian perspective on this sense? Jun, you might be mute or without. Or
Hello,
with
hi. Sorry. Yes, I was mute. So, my name is Jun Primawan. I'm based in Indonesia. So I'd like to emphasize again what Gaby already explained, that it is very important for the exporter to the seller to understand the market landscape and also the compliance and regulation in each country. I would like to speak about the Indonesian situation for the agriculture business, that basically the more commodity that is imported to Indonesia have certain regulation. They have certain compliant that need to be fulfilled from both sides, not only from the seller side, but also from the buyer sides. In the simple term, that if the seller want to enter the market in Indonesia, first they need to know what is their product compliance to the buyers in Indonesia. For example, that there are product which is only can be imported only one by one company, by the central logistic company. There is also product. There are about 28 category of product that are regulated, and the importer need to have a certain quota, which is given by the Indonesian government. And this is a very good for the exporter, the seller point of view, because the Indonesian government doing certain of screening to give the buyer knows that the seller knows that the buyer is already qualified to import, and they have the authority to import. And this is a very critical point, because I heard there are some experience that exporter doesn't have the knowledge about the compliance. So when they export to Indonesia, the buyer doesn't have the quota by the government, and they have started to get a problem. And need also to understand that certain country, if I'd like to speak about Indonesia, the entry point are very limited. There are only 4 ports that are allowed to enter for agriculture product in Indonesia, except for 9 countries which is having agreement with the Indonesian government in terms of the laboratory. So these countries can enter to any port under port Indonesia. So this is one of the key point that exporter need to understand before they're making a contract to the Indonesian buyers. They need to see not only the financial capability of the buyers, but they can also ask if the buyer has a proper quota allocation by the government. And this quota in Indonesia is quite tricky, because the quota is given by product by certain timing. So one importer, for example, they have an apple quota, and then they have only 10 containers within 6 months. They can only do import during that certain period, and the same and the quantity from certain countries and certain product. So this is good for the seller when they want to enter. Let's say American exporter want to China exporter want to export apple to Indonesia. They need to check how much quota do you still have. If they cannot prove to you that they still have the quota, then you can skip and then try to get more information about others company. I think this is there are so many regulation that you need as a seller, you need to know, and that's why you need an expert in local market to give you guidance how you can enter the market and how to make your business or contract to be sustained and continuous. I can speak about other example, for example, about peanuts, which is not quota, but there's also specific B2B relationship with the importer, and this local knowledge is a key when we want to penetrate and enter to the market.
Okay. Thank you very much, Jun. Yes, local knowledge is, I think, what an exporter need about who's trading with. So let's go directly to our next question, question 2. So, what are the critical steps for ensuring that products from developing markets meet international quality standards and certifications? So, I think Gabi actually had a few slides dedicated to that. So, Hamza, let's start with you. What can you add in this sense? You are muted.
Essentially, what I'd like to say in this briefly is that people need to understand and comply with regulations of the countries. Now, you'll find in the Middle East, for example, there's not as much of a requirement where it comes to accreditation such as Global Gap, whereas within the UK and Europe, Global Gap is one of the most essential accreditations you need to have to enter certain markets. However, it doesn't just stop at Global Gap, because a lot of retailers around the UK and Europe are looking at the social responsibility of the producers as well, and how responsible they are socially. So, that would entail them to have an accreditation such as SMETA as well. So, essentially, you need to understand that within the UK and Europe, if you want to develop your products and have a regular flow of produce coming here, you need to invest in getting the critical accreditation in place. In addition to that, I would definitely suggest that you have your own quality assurance systems. You ensure the traceability of your product from farm to plate is there, so that you can show to the buyers that you are a supplier who follows the processes in the correct manner. And of course, everything involves certifications and audits. As well as the fact that I would say you need to handle the quality of your packaging in the correct manner, so that it does meet the standards of if you wanted to import to the UK and European market. Your boxes have got to be presentable, your fruit has got to be presentable, and the more presentable it is, nowadays we eat with our eyes, so the more presentable a fruit is, the more you'll find that buyers would be enticed to work with you and buy your produce.
Okay, perfect. Definitely have knowledge of the different certifications that are needed. It's key to one of these operations. Jun, do you want to add something regarding products coming out from Indonesia?
Yes, I think in terms of certification, definitely. I think all the panelists already explained. Maybe I would like to share about how the quality product enter Indonesia instead of outside Indonesia, because I see that the participants here are sellers, and maybe quite interesting information. And I will give you the example about the peanut product in Indonesia, which are basically there are 3-4 companies doing the import of the peanut product mainly from India, and this is quite tricky because developing the trust of the import for this company is quite difficult. So when we develop the market, we develop business with this company, we need to have a quite long process. Like my partner already explained, that we need to have trust, and this trust sometimes is very tricky, and that's the reason why there are many importer of peanut in Indonesia. For example, they're asking exporter actually to import by themselves, and then they will buy it locally. The consequence is they have to pay for the taxes, extra taxes, VAT taxes, which is not applied if they are importing directly. But they are willing to sacrifice that taxes because there was an issue with the foreign exporter on the claim process. So apart from the certification, the seller need to have and to convince the buyer that the claim process is smooth and efficient. Um, this is a very critical, because if we have a good product, we have a good service, but then the claim process takes time, very complicated process, and that making our position in the market, our competitive advantage in market, become losing. So seller, it is, I think Gabi already explained, it is very good if the seller have the representative in the market, but then of course it will become very complicated in terms of the operation of the company. And that is, I think we are in the market that can support seller to help them to follow up with them on their current transaction.
Okay, thank you very much, Jun. Mehmet, any information about this from Turkey side?
Yeah, of course. For the sustainability, quality standard is must, because if you would like to make some business to go on, you have to provide the same quality, not to upset the buyers, obviously. And also like BRC, IFS, like in actually all over the world, not just in Turkey or in Middle East or in Europe, like worldwide is very appreciated certification. They are mostly management certification, along with quality too. So those certificates, of course, gonna help for the companies to at least like to show them they were inspected by the third party, which is kind of proving that they're doing something in standards to gain new buyers. And for the sustainability, of course, international quality standards are the must, especially for the Turkey market. If you are working with the factories, if your sales channel are just the factories, so it's still like negotiable about the quality and everything. But if you are going to work with retailers, repackers, so you have to have some standards to go on for the business.
Okay, for sure. That's pretty clear, I think, from our three panelists. So let's move on to our third question right away. What are some effective strategies for building solid relationships with international buyers and maintaining successful long-term partnerships? So as we saw in Gabriela's presentation, there are a lot of challenges there in terms of payments, in terms of credits, in terms of all the negotiations that go through with our first once we have one of first customers that we still don't trust yet. So Mehmet, do you want to share your thoughts from the Turkish perspective?
Yeah, of course. I mean, the most effective strategies, like, it's going to be a bit repeat, but you have to know your products, you have to know your buyers, you have to know the market, and it's all the process for the taxes, restrictions, and their like seasonality, when they are willing most to following and sharing with the buyers the market insights to keep your connection very alive, be in touch very frequently, so you can be always following the opportunities. Because if you do calls like for 1 month, per 2 months, etc., just when you have the goods, so you will miss many opportunities what you couldn't freeze as well. So being in touch, being honest, answering on time, even if you have the problem or any issues, like being very transparent against those issues and not leaving without answer, it will just create you very good relation. And we always say like, you must have some business partners who are also your friend in the sector, because like whatever we do is also our life, right? So we have to live with all of these markets, insights, those friends, because like in trade, our lives and work is kind of together. So we have to just know that how to manage all these relations in trustworthy way, and then success will follow, obviously.
Okay, great insight. Thank you very much. Jun?
Yes, I believe that if you want to develop a long-term relationship, specifically for B2B, if we need to target, if we want to target the volume, then we have to target for the producers. For example, milk product, we need to target for the milk packaging company. For juice concentrate product, we need to target the juice company. For a peanut snack product, we need to target for the snacking company. And this company, they have a process, and they have their own standard. And realistically, of course, seller, they have their own standard as well. And this need to have a quite good, strong, and also understand, both party need to have a understanding in terms of negotiation. For example, that if you want to export food product, fresh product to Indonesia, Indonesian buyer usually expect for the balance payment after arrival, which is quite difficult for exporter, for the first time exporter, to do that kind of the term of payment. But that is the risk. It is the penetrating cost for the exporter to enter the market. Most of the exporter, when they want to export to Indonesia, they said, we don't know the company, we don't know the buyers, and they don't know how the process, they don't know about the quota system and so on. And when the buyer asking about the term of payment to be 20% upfront and then 80% balance in the cash after arrival, they will step back, they stop. But that's the challenge, right? That's exporter need to compromise. For example, with other producers, snack company, they are importing a lot of peanuts from India, and the term of payment, they don't want to import directly. They ask the exporter to import for them in Indonesia. They are willing to pay the taxes, as I already explained. That is the cost for them to ensure that the product they receive is according to the standard. Um, Based on my discussion with the importer, the buyer in Indonesia, they were quite concerned about the service in terms of the claim. The claim procedure from the importer, from the exporter, sometimes is very complicated, and it is really discourage them to have a long-term relationship with such of exporter. So other than that, I think the exporter also need to have the flexibility in um, term of payment, in term of Incoterms, and in term of the service. Of course, the other variable like quality sample before the shipment, certification is compulsory. Yeah, but then to have the sustained business, then you need to have a strong service, a relationship, and also the claim process, smooth claim process.
Okay, of course. Hamza, do you want to finish with the third question?
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with Jun. To establish a long-term relationship with buyers, you need to work on establishing long-term contracts and partnerships with them. Now, there's many ways you can go about this. I mean, you could, for example, even offer to customize the packaging according to the buyer's brand itself. And if you had the capabilities as a producer to customize the packaging, you would entice the buyer to come and work with you a lot more. Another thing I would definitely suggest is be transparent with the buyers, right? With regards to your quality, the standard, be transparent and always continuously, consistently provide them with information relating to your country and your product, so they understand exactly what's going on in your market, when you expect the prices to increase, for what reason. It could be, you're having adverse weather conditions, could be a shortage of the produce. But the more you keep the buyers in the loop about the situation with your product and the country that you're in, the more he will be inclined to work with you, because he understands you've got a full product knowledge. And definitely I would suggest that you give your buyers not just support through the sale, but after sales support as well. Consistently, you could be offering them extra deals. You may have a point in the season where you have more production, so you want to make up an offer, a deal of some sort with the buyers, so just to keep them interested as well. So after sales support is something I would definitely recommend as well.
Of course, that's very interesting. Well, thank you very much for the three of you. We are running over time a little bit, so we will skip the Q&A questions, but we will review them and address them after the webinar. The questions that you have placed in the chat, we won't have time to review them now, but we will send you an answer after that. We'll also have shared with you the contacts, the email of our three panelists today. As you can see, they are all experts in the subject. They are open to help any one of you Tridge subscribers or Tridge of participants in the webinar. If you want to reach them and send them a message through their email, please do so. We have shared the contact with you in the chat. And last but not least, we also let me remind you that we have our advertising facility available for you on the newsletter banner ads. We have more than 230,000 subscribers. We have more than 600,000 monthly, weekly flags, views all our content. So it is a great opportunity to get your message across to key industry players. So please, if you have a brand or you have a specific product, please explore this opportunity. And if you're interested, please reach out to Tridge members. So with that in mind, I think that's all for us today. We are running a bit late in time, but I think it has been a great webinar session. Thank you very much to Gabi for that great presentation. Thank you very much for our three panelists for that insightful answers. I think we have a better understanding now on the processes, on the challenges that is to export from developing countries to main importing markets. So thank you very much to everyone. We will meet soon in our next webinar session that will announce soon when we have the topic to discuss. Thank you very much, and have a good evening, night, or day wherever you are.